Corey, thank you. Team ICIT, thank you. It's an incredible day. I've heard a lot of really positive comments about the sessions and the content. As Corey mentioned, I'm Parham Eftekhari. I have an ICIT hat I can wear. On this panel, I'll actually be wearing a different hat. I'm with the Cyber Risk Alliance, which is a information services company for the cybersecurity sector. And this panel is, when we do things like this, is one of my favorites because DC often is insular, right? We call ourselves a bubble for a reason. We talk to ourselves a lot. And we've heard every panel talk about the importance of industry and public-private partnership. And so this session is really designed to bring outside voices into DC. We have a panel of industry CISOs representing a diverse group of organizations. We have some other folks with us in our delegation, Jacob, Sudesh, Tedra. And really, I want you guys to have, there's 3 goals in this session, if you guys are gonna walk away from this. One is really to understand the needs and priorities of the industries and the people that we're serving, right? These conversations are designed to ultimately help industry and help chief security officers do their jobs and improve resilience. It's to help you get a deeper sense for the complexity of supply chains. It's been talked about a little bit, but the supply chains for these organizations are extremely complex and multi-layered. And third, it's really to strengthen community, right? We want to create relationships, and we want you to know who is out there in industry to be able to connect with you after the fact. So I just want to start first and foremost. I'll start to my left here. Why don't you just quickly introduce yourself and what your organization does?
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Ed Harris. I have a doctorate in cybersecurity, one of a few of us here in the United States. 35 years of network and cyber experience. I serve as a global director for information security for a manufacturing firm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. We're the largest rigid packaging manufacturer in the world. We sit across 5 different continents, so multinational corporation. In addition, I also serve as a research fellow for ICIT.
Cabled mic. Frank McGovern, the CISO of StoneX. Those of you who haven't heard of us, but we touch your money in some way. We are the Fortune 42 company in the world. We are financial services. We do everything besides banking and insurance for the most part. We move a lot of commodities, physical as well. We do futures, retail, self-directed, a lot of the financial market world here. We're in every country in the world except the ones that are sanctioned by OFAC, is what we operate in, and just happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I'm Mike Rogers. I'm the CISO at Hormel Foods. We make a lot of the tasty foods that are on your shelves. Spam, you probably know, Skippy peanut butter, Planters peanuts, and a number of others. We have a tremendous food service arm, so a lot of innovations in restaurant kitchens. And chances are, if you order a pizza, we made the pepperoni and the sausage. Not always the case, but in many cases it is. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey everybody, happy to be here. My name's Frank DePaula. I'm the global CISO for a manufacturing organization headquartered out of Charlotte, North Carolina called Enpro. Enpro is an organization that grows largely organically through mergers and acquisitions, and our subsidiaries manufacture highly engineered components across many industries from aerospace and defense, food and pharma, semiconductor, automotive, et cetera. So happy to be here.
Great. And the first question I do want everyone to ask, we'll start just with you. We've heard a lot of different threats, attack vectors, threat actors discussed today. From your perspectives as the individuals responsible for security in your organization, what is the biggest threat? Like, what is keeping you up at night, and what concerns you the most?
Yeah, so they hit us hard with the most important question first, right? What keeps you up at night? Common question CISOs are asked. I will say, for me, one of the biggest risks that we face right now is really the threat of accelerated breaches due to AI. And so I want to unpack that a little bit for you. First of all, a lot of organizations like mine, they believe in the promise of AI, right? So whether it's your CEO or your CFO going to meet with their industry groups and they're hearing about all the ways other companies are benefiting from AI, they're bringing that back and they're putting top-down pressure on IT teams to deliver new AI services and technologies. In addition, all of the tools that we use are now rolling out new features, including AI components, so we have to figure out how to use that. Well then, from within our manufacturing environments, we're learning all about new ways that our businesses are actually already implementing AI solutions. And so when it comes to a security team to have to create governance structures to protect and defend all that, it becomes a really challenging thing. If you capitalize that with the fact that a lot of the tech vendors that deliver AI security capabilities are very immature or emerging, it becomes a real challenge for security teams to be successful in that paradigm. So all of that said, this AI world has created a new challenge for us, and that of itself is not the true risk. But when you plug that in to the intersection of nation states attacking critical infrastructure, they're going about it using supply chains and exploiting supply chains, and then they're accelerating those attacks with AI. It becomes a really, really difficult problem to contend with.
I don't disagree with anything Frank just said. I'll add that just in traditional manufacturing, I worry a lot about availability attacks against me, but also against my supply chain. So we have raw materials coming in on one side, right, that we process and we make into tasty food, but then we also have transportation and cold storage networks. And a good example of the disruption from this is the Americold breach a couple years ago. One of the largest, there's two very, very large cold storage companies in the world. And they'll tell you, and they're right, that the refrigeration was never impacted, but they couldn't identify what was where. So it's no good, right? Who cares? We've got a whole bunch of food sitting in a warehouse, millions of pounds of food that's about to go bad that can't get distributed. That's a very real impact that's recent, and that fragility exists on both sides of me, all across our supply chain.
Yeah, I think I always think about this question a little different. I don't really like the question, what keeps you up at night, because nothing does, to be honest with you. Yeah, I do. I sleep very well because I do what I can with the resources I have, and I address the risks in a methodical approach, and that gives me the peace of mind that I'm doing the right thing and for my clients and my business. So the thing I'm focused on, though, I would say, and the top threat that I'm most focused on, the same to availability that you were saying, is the resiliency aspect. And Nick and Brett were saying this in the session before us, right? I think the pivot to resiliency is the model moving forward. You know, security for a long time was in the prevention space. We had to prevent what's coming in, the castle doctrine type of model. They moved into detect. Now we know we can't prevent everything, so we need to detect it so we can isolate and contain how much actually occurs when a compromise happens. And I think those are table stakes now. I think all of our jobs is to prevent and detect at all times. You have to be doing that. Now we're shifted into this resiliency model because you're adapting to this world where something is going to happen. And it's not, can I stop that? Can I detect it? It's, can critical services remain operating if something goes wrong? And that's where all of my key focus is now, especially with my company. We are growing like crazy. You know, we weren't even in the Fortune 500 7 years ago, and now we're a Fortune 42. So we are trying to build like a Netflix, basically, in the financial services world. We need to be up. It can't go down, or else it is very impacting. And that's my biggest focus. And I'll add not just one thing. I ditto what everyone else is saying here. I'm not going to try and name off everything that's a threat to me today. That's the biggest focus for me right now. Handling identity. And for those that don't know identity, it's basically what you're using to do your work when you log in, when you access things, and then there's non-human identities. There's machine accounts, there's AI now with identity. Effectively managing identity is actually extremely difficult. I would argue if any company says they're handling identity, I don't really believe them. It's very difficult as you get larger, as you get global, as you get into more markets to effectively handle identity in all use cases. And then I'll give you the non-technical one. I worry about burnout. My people, I'm worried about my people. All of my people are working over capacity. I'm trying to keep them working, under 40-hour weeks, not work weekends as much as I can. But with the resources I have, it's always hard and difficult. And everything we're trying to solve, because I'm a builder of programs, I'm building a program, it's always difficult. So I'm always focused on my people and making sure that they're always operating with the right mental acuity that they need.
Yeah, I think for me, it is supply chain. Again, being a manufacturer, we manufacture rigid packaging, and so it's all about the consumption of raw materials. We do import a lot of cold rolled steel. We get a lot of plastics that we make mostly plastic fiber and steel products. But my biggest concern is my third parties, because they're all significantly smaller than me. They no doubt lack the budgets they lack the cyber talent to put in the protections, and that is a concern. So we, to the best of our abilities, we do our due diligence. When we engage with a third party, we have to let them on our networks to do the kinds of things that they do for us. We're very diligent about locking them down, give them access to only the things based on the contractual obligations, and minimizing my exposure. There's been some discussion. It's like, well, if you've got a good program, why not be your brother's keeper, right? Why not help the third parties become stronger on behalf of your organization whom they're providing services to? That becomes a little bit of a challenge, because then I own some of the risk that they have to be responsible for, and that's just not something that we can do. I'd love to be able to spend more time working with smaller organizations and helping out there, but it is a concern. And then my other concern is unchecked AI. I think that probably just scares the hell out of me. And I see a few people nodding their heads and smiling. That probably does as well. Yeah, I mean, AI, it's great. It's booming. There's a lot of great things that can happen with it. But you asked, I won't mention any names. You ask one AI program a question, you ask it the same question again on Friday, 4 days later, and the answer will be different. And I worry about that a little bit around the fortitude that AI has in providing real consistent, repeatable guidance.
Yeah. So thank you guys, and again, it demonstrates there are some commonalities, but if you hear the examples, it really is a diverse set of challenges, and particularly Mike's example on the food chain. I think just thinking the practical implications of it, and certainly when you think about nation states and how they want to disrupt our society, our day-to-day, and imagine some of these scenarios playing out in a week of a presidential election, and certainly in a contested county or contested state. This is how these threats can be really exacerbated, not just to digital and physical outcomes, but really in ultimately degrading trust in our democratic institutions. And so, guys, we talked about what's challenging to you. What's holding you back? When you're going out to solve these problems, and looking to effectively manage risk, whether it's digital risk or risk in general. Because I do think the word CISO it's focused on the cyber bit, but ultimately what the job is to maintain and manage risk for the organization, right? What are the barriers to effective risk management that you're facing today?
Oh, I'm the starter. Okay. I think the big things for me are cost pressure right now. Being a global workforce and a global economy, this has a good and bad benefits. Since we're in many countries, my team is pretty dispersed globally, but that also puts cost pressure on me to optimize my team in a way that makes sense. So unfortunately, in some positions, the U.S. is considered a high-cost central location. So I am advised to push out to lower-cost regions and push employee roles that could exist here in the U.S. out of the U.S. because of the cost pressures that I see in this global economy for the workforce. In addition, I think some of the regulatory requirements that exist are very problematic and very hard to build a methodical, well-thought-out program. In my sense, I have 26 major regulators. You can consider a major regulator in my definition like the SEC. I have 26 of those across the world that I have to deal with, and every single one of those has their own different idea of how cybersecurity should be implemented. And unfortunately, that makes me build an environment that is compliant, not an environment that is secure, because that's just the nature of the game on how much oversight I have in what I'm building. And then I think the interconnected way that we exist as entities and as a workforce, as corporations across the world in the economy, is also a big pressure for me, because I have to, as we were mentioning here, with third-party supply chain, it puts a lot of concerns on the environment I'm trying to build, because we don't work so much in isolation anymore, right? I have to connect to many other players in the market, and they're kind of helping dictate where my security program goes by the way they're operating. So it has a lot of impact on what I am trying to build, in less in a methodical way and more in a compliance way.
I'm just going to double down on something you said for the context of this room around regulatory, and I think both consistency and complexity. So when we have programs that are renewed every 12 months, and you can't count on it being there next year, I can't build a program on that. I'm forecasting 18 to 36 months out for my program, and I have to present to my board of directors what I'm doing 2 years from now. And so having a program that expires in June or in September again and again and again, I can't build on that. So then I basically do the minimum and I don't cooperate until I have something I can count on. So I think the long-term renewals, CVE is a good example of making this a protected line item. We need that with NVD. We need it to be more forward-looking. We need that with information sharing and liability protection. My lawyers won't let me share information if my liability protection expires 6 months from now. I need it to be permanent. So for us to cooperate better, we need consistency and we need simplicity as much as possible. So for this reporting, I had an incident a few years ago. 3 federal agencies, who I won't name, all showed up at my door wanting to help. None of them were much help, and they didn't know about each other. They weren't talking to each other. So give me one door, right? One door where I can share all the reporting I need to, and then y'all deconflict and share it amongst each other and engage with me with one person. Because I'm on my worst day, right? And you're hitting me with all this complexity. So that's what I would look for, and that's a bipartisan criticism.
So for me, it'd be a little bit different. I definitely agree and face with some of these challenges. But where my mind goes is, in a global manufacturing environment, multiple business units across the organization. For me, it's visibility, right? Digital risk, being able to effectively manage digital risk by not having the right visibility. And when I think about that, it's not from the perspective of having visibility with all my security tools, but it's really lacking context and awareness about what our organizations are doing, right? Long are the days where security teams just existed to provide security to the business. Right now, we're in the process of actually providing like business enabling services to our organization. We frame cybersecurity as a competitive advantage to our business. And so when you think about, I'm not just a component of the IT organization anymore. I actually contribute to our business's ability to generate profits. But in order for me to be able to guide and protect the business and new endeavors, I have to have that visibility and context to what they're doing, how they're doing it, and that requires me as a security leader and my team as a security organization to think about our role a little bit differently. We have to lean into understanding what we're manufacturing, the supply chains that we're all talking about. We have to know where those risks are. We have to understand a little bit more about geopolitical impact. We have semiconductor manufacturing in Taiwan. Well, we heard earlier about the potential reunification. Well, that scares our business. And from my security team's perspective, we have to know the impact to intellectual property protection. We have to know, what does that mean? What are the implications on how we think about delivering cybersecurity in a world where Taiwan is potentially reunified with China? So it becomes that whole visibility aspect that is a really key component of focus for my organization.
Yeah, and excuse me. One of the other topics that obviously we had an opening session on and has come up repeatedly is workforce. Frank, you mentioned taking care of your people, right, as one of your challenges. What are some of the proven tactics and strategies that you guys have found helps you recruit and retain? And I think, specifically to this audience, what role, if any, do you see the government playing, and how can government policy and how can these folks in this room help you be successful on the workforce front?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen over time, we know that there is a shortage of personnel versus the number of cybersecurity jobs that are available in the country. If you're a top tier organization, you've got big money, you can recruit big talent, and people want to stay. What does that mean for the smaller organizations? That means you don't have access necessarily to top tier talent, though you've got a lot of folks who want to get in. So I think one of the value propositions is to make sure that we're funding educational institutions, regular colleges, community colleges, trade schools, and even get down into high school programs and even K through 12. If you think about it, if we begin to talk about simple things like security and cyber, and talking to that at a kindergartner level obviously might be a little bit much, but can you imagine the next round of cyber warriors that are going to come out just starting at high school after you've had it ingrained over a number of years of just basic education. And if you think about it, well, where does that fit? Well, what is an agricultural specialist going to do with cyber? Well, what is an automotive person going to do with cyber? I mean, cyber is being built into everything. I remember reading a story about Tesla and how a bad actor was able to pull up beside the vehicle, attach to the Wi-Fi at the front of the car, activate the brakes, and flip the car. You know how many executives I pissed off when I read that story to my executive group that just bought Teslas? Yeah, it was a little disappointing. But the fact of the matter is that if we begin to build a community, even at the lowest levels, thinking a little bit about cyber, by the time we graduate high school seniors and going into trade schools, we're graduating warriors already thinking about the next electronic battlefield.
One thing I'll just a short thought to add is we talk a lot about it starting with the educational institutions, and one of the problems that I've heard that I think is a foundational area of need is a lot of times these programs take potentially years of time to get through their accreditation process. And so when we talk about the fact that technology, the speed of change and advancement is overnight in some cases, weeks, days, hours, minutes, and then we pair that up against the fact that these educational institutional programs that all of us are depending on to train the generation of the future take years to develop, well, there's a disproportionate timing aspect of that. So when I think about the question, which is what can government legislation do to help, I think we need to solve that problem. We need to figure out a way to make our educational institutions or the source of learning for the next generation to be much more real time and much more in tune with where the markets currently are, not where they were 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So.
I can go or you can go.
I guess I'll say I think the work for education is definitely the key thing that I've been a big proponent for. I think we need to get earlier in the education, and it's not just higher education, it's the K through 12 world, planting seeds earlier. Because if you look at a lot of the cyber attacks that have happened, we're still not doing the foundations right. I know the new shiny, like AI and everything, is very exciting. It's the sexy thing in the room. But like, there's just very simple things when you look at how hacks are actually occurring that we're just not getting fundamentals right that were solved 20 years ago, companies are still not doing. And I think it's that lack of knowledge in the cybersecurity space coming into the workforce that is the impediment that's causing that outcome. And I think that one of the key things here that is really good to think on is, I think there needs to be more debate on, especially here in Washington and government, is the debate on RTO and work from home. I think it's a little bit of a fallacy that we always look at work from home as a benefit. There are certain people who have certain jobs like construction where work from home would be a nightmare to them. They don't want to work from home in an office. They don't want to work in the office either. So I think not looking at it as a benefit, looking at it as a necessity because that's what technology has enabled for us, is going to be the right answer. And I think it also opens up pockets of talent. If you look at the amount of talent that's across this country in rural areas, not in big cities, it's everywhere. Unfortunately, RTO does not enable rural communities because it forces people to have to move to big cities to work for those big companies. So by allowing for work from home, I can hire somebody who lives on 20 acres in the middle of Montana as my cybersecurity engineer, and he or she is probably a genius. But I can't right now because they don't want to move to Chicago or New York City, which is understandable. So I think that debate needs to happen more, and it needs to understand that technology has enabled us, that the worker can be anywhere.
Yeah, and one of the important things I think you pointed out there was it's not just for cyber professionals. This is basically education of the business community to have them be cyber savvy and cyber aware and to prioritize cybersecurity when they are making business decisions. And I'm a practical person. The reality is our current model is that profits trump everything, and I think that is a different conversation to have. We have to start talking about being responsible stewards of our economy and prioritizing security over profits. But I think this is an important distinction because we often talk about cyber education and educating and developing the next generation of cyber workforce, but having allies within the business and educating them on cybersecurity will impact us I think arguably as much as having just more skilled cyber professionals, because oftentimes it's the business that is holding things back and maybe making decisions that are cyber insecure. We talked about supply chains several times already. share a little bit. I forgot who was mentioned it. There's interdependencies, excuse me, with some of your industries, and probably all your industries, and some of our nation-state adversaries, whether it's in the context of customers, suppliers. How do you manage that? And just talk a little bit about the complexities of your supply chain, and give the folks, I think, a sense for how you navigate said complexities.
We struggle with this. I'll just go briefly on this, but I have over 7,000 suppliers. And modeling where we have over dependencies maybe on one supplier versus another, single points of failure, we look to buy software on this front. We're actually looking to develop partnerships right now. And we talk in cyber all the time about threat intelligence. We're looking for supplier intelligence. And so where can we model likely failures in our suppliers is something that we're working on right now, and building redundancies in our own supply chain.
Yeah, I'll say the interconnected, 7,000. I've been talking with my company. We're at 2,000, and I thought that was too many vendors that we have, and I got to rethink this now. Maybe I'm bigger than I think. I think the interconnected economy globally is what we're discussing here, and I think that's great because it drives innovation, it drives efficiencies in how we produce outcomes that we need. But I think exiting that global economy is not the right answer. I think the right answer is just understanding risk and doing essential risk management, understanding where critical points are, understanding how to have not this concentration risk where you're too much into one area, and allowing single points of failure. And I think understanding how to bounce around and exit certain areas as necessary when that risk becomes larger is the key way to stay connected into the global economy.
Yeah, and I would echo much of the same. So when you're talking about the interdependence of a global community and then threats from nation states, I mean, risk-making decisions are key. You obviously, you have to understand what your world looks like so you know where your risk points are, and then rely on some reasonable threat intelligence from some of our public sector partners to help us understand some of the bigger key stake items that we might not be able to see in the private sector. And then diversification and supply chain resilience. It's great that you buy one part from one supplier, but you need to find 4 or 5 more partners to buy that same part from.
And the only thing I would add is when we think about supply chain risk, from a manufacturing organization like mine, we tend to think about our direct suppliers and the risk that those direct suppliers introduce to our organization. What we're not really factoring in is oftentimes those suppliers have other relationships with upstream, downstream suppliers, and therefore we develop this false sense of trust with our supply chain because we think it's just one layer removed. But the reality of it is it's exponentially, there's layers and layers that expand the risk in ways that we don't fully understand. And really, it's been hard for us as a security community to figure out effective ways to manage that at scale.
Yeah.
One sentence.
Oh, yeah, of course.
We're all relatively resourced, right? The fact that we have CISO titles means our companies can afford cybersecurity teams. Most of our suppliers don't have a single person in cybersecurity.
Yeah, there's several studies out there, but there's a fallacy that CISOs, there actually are not many CISOs. 70% of companies do not have a CISO. Most CISOs have a director or VP title. There's billion-dollar companies out there where the CISO is a director. And you talk about, that's why I made the comment about education of the business, because this industry in this field, either they're highly regulated, they're at the largest end of the large, or they've had a really significant incident that impacted stock prices, and the board said you got to do something about it, and sometimes it's just, frankly, for optics. Guys, we're down to our final question here, and Ed, I'll start with you. I want everyone to get a chance on this one. We're here in Congress. It's a unique opportunity. What is your ask? What can policymakers do that would help you and help your industries and help the cybersecurity industry writ large address some of these problems that you've identified?
2 points. Number one, ensure that our premier cyber intelligence services, I won't name any names, but you know the ones I'm talking about, they are equipped to identify and defend tomorrow's electronic warfare, and that the threat intelligence is shared in a timely manner with private sector organizations like myself so that we can protect our missions at home. And then secondly, develop legislation around no foreign ownership in critical infrastructure sectors I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, but you would be surprised.
For me, I'll say it's really about the first element is we talk about like CISA, FBI, NSA, et cetera, having resources for organizations, but I think that we need to find ways to make those resources a little bit more well-known to the private industry. So I had an opportunity to attend the FBI CISO Academy a couple years back, which was an amazing opportunity. But I've talked to a lot of CISOs for Fortune 500 organizations that had no idea that exist. So I think that's a critical part of it. And then the second component that I would say is changing our mindset from, a compliance-driven focus into a more of an operational resilience focus. So I think about like CMMC certification that applies to the defense industrial base. It's taken us from traditional DFARS controls to more, I guess, proactive security where we're actually required to do an assessment. But really, it's just a compliance exercise. We're not actually assessing whether those controls, as they're implemented in our organizations, are actually, meeting the mark.
So I have a stretch goal, and then I have something very practical. The stretch goal is on that career front. For every position I have open, every entry level, I have 10 people I'd love to hire. I have a position posting today where I need 5 years of experience, and finding that person is really, really hard. So that on-ramp from college into like actually being useful in an enterprise is, I think, where the gap is today. So I don't know how to solve that one, so that's why it's a stretch goal. Yeah?
Yeah, open internship programs.
Internship and apprenticeships.
Right, because what that does is if you look at everybody that's graduating from college with the exact same degree in cybersecurity, what's the differentiator? The people who went out and did 4 years worth of internships.
Yeah, you're right. And then I think more practically is that complexity and inconsistencies are taxes on defenders. So we need to know what we can count on, and it has to be consistent because we're building so long out. So give us a landscape that we can count on that's committed for the next 5 to 10 years, and we can build our programs around it. But when CISA's up, I will name CISA because it was mentioned earlier today. When CISA's up and down, you know what, like if I can use them, that's great, but I'm not gonna build around something that I can't count on. I can't afford to.
Yeah, I think education mentioned here already heavily is a big one, but I think the other one is the regulatory consolidation. And I think when I say this, I mean globally, consolidation and more partnership on how the regulations are coming out around cybersecurity, privacy, and others. I think the U.S. needs to do more, and even other countries need to do more on if a certain country or group of countries like Europe has already come out with a good regulation, we should just say ditto. Why do we have to write our own custom regulation that is completely different? And now, as a company, for me, it's a huge impediment that I have two completely different regulatory legislations that I have to solve for. I'd rather see us more like if there's good stuff out there, like the Cyber Resilience Act that the EU has, or DORA and Operational Resilience, like we should just be copying those GDPR instead of trying to develop our own.
I just had a conversation with somebody about this, about quantum. I think we're making the same mistake again. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. ICIT, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you all for listening.